Okay, this is a little tutorial video to help you create a graph in a Google Doc. For those who don't know how to do it, it's basically what you're going to do is you're going to, in your Google Doc, in the space you're going to do it, you're going to end up putting it into a Google Sheet, and then from that Google Sheet you'll be able to modify things back into your Google Doc. But I'll show you some of the steps and just some of the basics of how to set that up. So I'm just starting here with the rubric that we use a lot of times for a lab report. And I'm just going to pick the space where I want to put the data table, so I'm just going to pick right there. All right, first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to Insert, Chart, and Line. What that's going to do, it's going to give you this generic graph. That's just kind of your launching point. It doesn't have the title you want or anything like that, but we can modify it. So the way we need to do this, we're going to go to this arrow on the top right. We're going to click Open Source. So what that's going to do is it's going to open up a tab right next door to your document for Google Sheets, and it's going to create the data table, and eventually it might take a moment to load up. It's going to create that graph again. Do not delete this graph. Do not delete this graph. It's the graph that you're going to need to modify, but it is kind of in the way, so a lot of times I will move it aside there. Oops. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter my data. So this first row here are going to be all your variables, your independent and your dependent. And this first column A is going to be your x-axis or your independent variables. So let's just pick one. I'm going to say it's time. And let's just say I'm going from 0 to, let's just say 5, make it easy, 5 minutes. And let's say I'm measuring the temperature of 3 different objects, 3 substances. So we'll do temp number 1, temp number 2, temp number 3. All right, and you're just going to enter your data. So if you have a data table already set up over here on this side, that's actually where the data table should go. But let's just say you have your data table set up here, you can just copy and then paste it over into here. But since I'm just kind of making this up, I'm going to say little trick here. If you set this pattern up you want, if you know it's consistent, let's say it's then we'll say this was 95. Just for what I'm going to be doing next, actually, let's make this. All right, so once you have all your data in, what you're going to do next is you are going to you'll notice as I was doing it that it was changing some of these numbers, but yeah, when I was doing the third temperature, which was the column I kind of had to add here, it didn't start showing up. And that's because this graph here doesn't recognize this data yet. So what I need to do is I need to incorporate it. Easiest way is to double click on the graph, and it's going to give you the chart editor. You'll see I have my column A, or my x-axis, and then followed by temp 1, temp 2, and anything else I want to add to it, temp 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, object 4, 5, 6. I need to click Add Series, and it's going to ask you what data do you want to use, including the heading. You're going to click and drag the one you want, click OK, and there you go. All right. So that now we have the data. If I needed to do a fourth one, I'd just do the same thing, click and drag to that data. All right, at this point, we can kind of customize our graph. You notice right now we have our numbers on our axes, but our title doesn't seem right. We don't have any naming of the variable. What does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? What is that representing? So we're going to customize it. We're going to go to Chart and Title. You can go to the style, and there's some other things you can do if you really want to play around with it, but we're going to start here. Chart title. So we'll just say it's time and temperatures. It's going to be my title. I can also, from this spot right here, I can change the horizontal or x-axis, which say it's time in minutes. And the vertical axis, that's the y-axis, we'll say that's, or we said that was temperature, and we'll say it's in Fahrenheit. There we go. To be kind of a little bit, change things up if we really need to. Let's say let's see, and then at that point, anytime I change this data here, so let's say I go back to this being, a lot of times what that will do is we'll change my scale. And so if I need to fix that, I can manually fix my scale. Let's say for whatever reason I wanted it to be between 20 and 100. I can force the graph to change the y-axis, although we always should start at 0, but that's just a little interesting thing. If you need to do that, you can do that with the horizontal axis or the vertical axis. So at this point, when you feel pretty comfortable about what you want your graph to look like, you're going to go back over to your Word doc or your Google Doc, and it's going to still look the same because you need to update chart. And there you go. If you still like, oh, I forgot the data, or I don't like those colors, or I didn't do the title the way I wanted to, you can always go back to it. Even if you close this tab, you just go back to open source, go back to it, update anything you need to do, go back here, update once more. Okay, I hope that can help you get started. Any other details you could probably figure out or ask Mr. Rich.